you have a loved one in need of aged care? St. Nicholas Senior Care Centre in Punchbowl provides premium, personalised support that doesn't just support your loved one's needs, but respects their independence. Providing a premium, welcoming community within which your loved one can flourish, you'll rest easy knowing that your loved one is in a safe, caring environment that doesn't just feel like family and home, but really is. Visit acare.au or call 02 8313 2200 to see how St. Nicholas can assist your loved one. St. Nicholas Senior Care Centre, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast. Did you know an SMS is read within 3 minutes of delivery, and that SMS is still the #1 business communication tool? Let Agility help you connect with your customers with a cheap and effective SMS solution. As one of Australia's top business SMS providers, Agility helps you and your business deliver your message, track campaign success, and drive customer action. Visit agility.com.au or call 1300 764 451 and chat to Peter and his team to see how SMS can help your business. Agility, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast. There's no Uzo Talk without a bottle of Uzo, which is why we love the Greek Providor. Get a real taste of the very best produce that Greece has to offer. From olive oils and delicious artisan sweets to unique spirits, earthy herbs and memorable wines. Visit thegreekprovidor.com.au to see their amazing range. The Greek Providor, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast.
Sound is.
Εδώ ραδιοφωνικός σταθμός Αθηνών. Μεταδίδομεν το πρώτον ανακοινωθέν του ελληνικού γενικού στρατηγίου. Οι Ιταλικές στρατιωτικές δυνάμεις προσβάλλουν από τις 5ης και 30 πρωινής της σήμερον τα ημέτερα τμήματα προκαλύψεως της ελληνοαλβανικής μεθορίου. Οι ημέτερε δυνάμεις αμήνονται του πατρίου εδάφους. Έλληνες, κρατήστε καλά μέσα στην ψυχή σας το πνεύμα του μετώπου. Έλληνες, ψηλά τις καρδιές. Ο πόλεμος μας συνεχίζεται και θα συνεχιστεί μέχρι της τελικής νίκης. Ζήτω το έθνος των Ελλήνων.
Nick Athanasiou, I've got chills, mate. I mean, listening to something like that, how does that make you feel? What does that evoke for you?
Goosebumps, Tom. Honestly, like you just said, I think we've heard it before, but hearing it every time, it just gives you a chill. Finding out that this is what the Greeks in Greece were listening to, knowing they were going to war. So that was really chilling. Every time we play it, Tom, I don't know what it is, I get goosebumps.
I mean, it's very hard to sort of put yourself in that environment where we are in a position of, being invaded or going to war or whatever the case is. It's very difficult for us to really understand what that meant. And the most important thing for us to realise, for you and I and for our generations, is that this is more than likely the reason why our parents or grandparents actually arrived here. This is ground zero for it, isn't it?
100%. Look, that one word, mass immigration out of Greece. This is why we are here. You're right. But look, just back to that radio broadcast. Imagine us sitting in our lounge room and then hearing that saying, we're going to war. Yeah, we're in Australia. We're going to war. We're getting invaded. We're going to war. How would you feel? You're there with your family, your kids, and any male, I guess, from 18 to 30s, 40s. Mate, grab your gun, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Some of them some of them are farm boys, but really inspirational. But like you said, that was the beginning of the mass immigration for Greeks all around the world,
And also important to note as well that for your family, my family, our partners' families, it resulted in many of their deaths. A lot of these people, my wife's great-grandfathers, 2 of them died, shortly after this period here. I know your family was heavily involved in the war as well. This is a story that's very close to home, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Look, it is. And like you said, I've got my dad's first cousin who fought on the front line, my dad's sister's husband who fought, but they both survived. So they got decorated as well. But look, I'm sure I've got lots of relatives that didn't make it. Because as you know, the war did start in the region where I'm from. So a lot of our villages got decimated. Even towns like Igoumenitsa. Igoumenitsa, if you go there, you're thinking, oh, look, what kind of era was this built? Little did we know, it got carpet bombed by the Italians. So it got rebuilt in the 50s and 60s. That's why it's got that sort of dull architecture about it. But yeah, it was a thriving city, but it just got carpet bombed, and it changed the whole of Greece in general, like you said.
Definitely. And we've got little remnants of it. I mean, your existence, my existence, our existence in general is a nod to that. But we've also got in the room, you've got the World War II helmet sitting on the desk here to sort of inspire us. This was worn by your uncle, was it not?
Yeah, definitely. He had it underneath the tap collecting water from a dripping tap.
Pride of place.
And they didn't care. They didn't, oh, well, the war's over now. What do we do with it? And he wanted to be use it in an efficient way, I guess. So.
Very resourceful, right?
Yes, that's right. But when I saw it, I go, Theo, I've got to have it. So he took it, he painted it, and I somehow, I don't think I smuggled it through. I didn't declare it, but would I have had to declare that? Don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But look, in addition to that, we do have some amazing people here who know all sorts of things and, really know this story really well. Two returning guests who we're very proud to have. To start with, the Consul General of Greece here in Sydney, Yiannis Mallikourtis. Welcome back to Ouzo Talk, Yanni.
Welcome, Yanni.
Kalos σας βρήκα. And that's the Greek that I will speak for today.
That's it. And of course, the great Nick Andriotakis, the mad Cretan. Not the mad Cretan. He is our favourite Cretan by far. Welcome.
Ή τα κάνετε κοέλια.
He started early.
Mate, I had that on my notes. Get Nick to talk Cretan, and you already did it. Well done, mate.
Tick that off. It was on the bingo card.
So that's probably the last Greek I will speak to.
I don't know.
No. We got to bring that back.
A few of those Tsipros, and I think we'll get him back to Greek.
I think so too. All right. Well, we are here to talk about Orchidee and World War II. This is not the first episode we've done on World War II. We've done, is it one or two at this point? I think it's two now, isn't it?
Yeah, this is our segment. But this is specifically on Orchidee. This is the one day. So we'll talk about the lead up, during and after, and then what happened way after.
Without any further ado, shall we do the honours?
Definitely, mate. Let's have a drink.
Στην υγεία μας.
Cheers, boys. Welcome.
Great to have everyone back in the room for this discussion. Nico, what are we drinking? Which Nico should we go to?
Okay, well, I was going to say, Tom, I was going to bring out because we've been having a lot of 35N. We're going to have the Lazarus Ouzo from your part of town, Corfu. However, because we got Cretan royalty in the house, we couldn't go past having a 35N. But even better, Nico, he brought his own 35N. We've got about 20 bottles here.
I know.
He brought his own. So, Crystal, you got another customer now. So, Nico, what are we drinking?
So we are drinking a Malvasia di Candia Aromatica. This is a grape variety that was lost from Crete. And it was growing in Italy. And the Italians called it Malvasia di Candia, Candia being the Venetian name for Crete. They had that grape variety in Italy, and some of the Greek wine growers went over and they grafted some grapes and brought them back to Crete. And now this Malvasia di Candia is grown on Crete, where it originally started.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah. So reintroduced to Crete.
Reintroduced to Crete, and this particular one is a barrel-aged Malvasia di Candia Aromatica. Well, gives you the idea that it's a very aromatic white wine. There's a beautiful taste of some sweet herbs and obviously cedar notes from the wood.
You definitely get that in it.
I must say that Crystal is doing an amazing business in bringing 35N. 35N means the 35th parallel latitude above the equator. And this is it runs right through Crete. That's why they've called it 35N. And here in Sydney, we're at about 34S, or something like that. These zones, north and south of the equator, are the Mediterranean climatic zones. California, Chile, South Africa, Adelaide, Barossa, South Australia, and Perth, Swan, Margaret River, South Australia, and Napa Valley, California, I mentioned before. And these are the Mediterranean climates around the world, and Crete is right in the centre of it.
There you go. How's that for an explanation?
I know, mate, he did far better than you. I'm sacking you.
I was going to say, I'm not even in reserve grade after that.
I know, mate.
Hey?
Yeah, President's Cup now,
Yeah,
mate. Come
probably.
on.
Jersey
Get
fleek.
with it. Well, fantastic, Nick.
Bravo, Nico.
Fantastic that you actually got onto the Greek Providor as well. And thank you, Crystal, for helping Nick out with that selection. I'm not sure that you knew that it would end up on the show.
No, not at all.
But there you go.
Go, Crystal.
It's wonderful how these things work out. So thank you, thegreekprovidor.com.au, for supplying the drinks again. And I mean, as usual, unfortunately, Yanni is not able to drink with us, but he is on his his regimen of sparkling water, which we appreciate. You being here at any rate. You're drinking with us in spirit.
He looks very smart in his tie. I like the tie you got, Yanni.
We also have a couple of other sponsors, obviously, who we're very proud to have. So Agility, right, Nick?
Yeah, definitely. Look, Peter Antoni and the team. Look, I was there in his office the other day. Yeah, so really good bunch of people, good banter. But I also met Maria. I think she quietly runs the place. You know,
really?
She was running around organising stuff. They're a great bunch of people. That's great having on board.
Definitely. And again, whatever size business you have, make sure you're reaching out to them. If you're looking for an online SMS solution, an SMS solution in general, and you're trying to reach customers, SMS is a great way to get your message across. Contact Agility, EDGILITY.
Beautiful.
You would have heard it in the intro as well.
That's it.
Agility.com.au. Check them out.
Great, good stuff. And we have a new sponsor on board as well.
We do have a new sponsor, and it's important because, I mean, around this sort of age bracket that we're in, Nick, and, you know, a little bit on either side as well, you know, you've got parents, grandparents, whatever the case is, that may be in need of aged care. So we're very proud to have St. Nicholas Senior Care Centre in Punchbowl actually on board now. If you need really good quality aged care, the guys at St. Nicholas Senior Care Centre will absolutely look after your loved one. It is a fantastic facility. Absolutely brilliant, isn't it, Nick?
Definitely. Look, I had a look at their website. Mate, the thing's like a resort. They got things like...
It really is.
They got a fully equipped gym, cafe. They got 9 dining areas.
Cinema.
They got a pet therapy area as well and a cinema. Yeah, mate, this is amazing. So...
Mate, I want to live there.
They've come a long way. I think everything we want's there, Tom. Gym, cafe, cinemas.
Maybe we can score a room together, Nick.
Yeah, maybe. One day. Book us in from now.
Absolutely. So inquire now to find out about personalised care for your loved ones. You know, it is one of the most important decisions you're ever going to make. So acare.au/contact to make sure you get in touch with them. Thank you very much, St. Nicholas, for jumping on board.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so, guys, Ohi Day. I mean, where do we even start? I mean, we've spoken about this at length, and we were very excited to put this episode together. I think we do have to start with Yanni, though.
Yeah, 100%.
In many respects. Yanni, the moments preceding the Ohi. Can you tell us a little bit about the circumstances to which that all came about? Set the scene for us, if you can.
Okay. The radio announcement is not from Metaxas, it's from the official station. Mm-hmm. Very laconic, telling the Greeks that we're at war and that we have to defend our ancestral homeland. And I find it very fascinating because it's not superfluous, it's not embellished, it's something brief and to the point, that we will defend ourselves, and that's it. And that's why it always gives me the goosebumps, this excerpt, which we always hear on this day every year.
So what does it evoke for you when you hear that? I mean, we know the goosebumps. What goes through your mind when you hear that clip, that first clip that we played there?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you have a loved one in need of aged care? St. Nicholas Senior Care Centre in Punchbowl provides premium, personalised support that doesn't just support your loved one's needs, but respects their independence. Providing a premium, welcoming community within which your loved one can flourish, you'll rest easy knowing that your loved one is in a safe, caring environment that doesn't just feel like family and home, but really is. Visit acare.au or call 02 8313 2200 to see how St. Nicholas can assist your loved one. St. Nicholas Senior Care Centre, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast. Did you know an SMS is read within 3 minutes of delivery, and that SMS is still the #1 business communication tool? Let Agility help you connect with your customers with a cheap and effective SMS solution. As one of Australia's top business SMS providers, Agility helps you and your business deliver your message, track campaign success, and drive customer action. Visit agility.com.au or call 1300 764 451 and chat to Peter and his team to see how SMS can help your business. Agility, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast. There's no Uzo Talk without a bottle of Uzo, which is why we love the Greek Providor. Get a real taste of the very best produce that Greece has to offer. From olive oils and delicious artisan sweets to unique spirits, earthy herbs and memorable wines. Visit thegreekprovidor.com.au to see their amazing range. The Greek Providor, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast.
I think all Greeks who grew up in Greece, but even abroad, know that the 28th of October is a very important, unique date for our national identity. In Greece, it is celebrated as a national day. Yeah, it is our second, let's say, most important day of the year after the 25th of March. When we were growing up, we used to do various festivities at school and commemorations of the event. And now we try to pass on this to our children. On this day, I always talk to my kids about it and the significance of a small nation deciding to resist. And we should not forget that at that specific juncture, we were the only ones together with the Brits, with the British, to resist. Everyone else had either lost or was sitting on the fence.
Is it the equivalent of Anzac Day we have in Australia, but the difference is Greece got invaded as opposed to Anzac Day being in a foreign country? Would that be the closest comparison?
Yes, I would say, although for the Australians, Anzac Day is a key component of their national identity.
Okay.
In our case, I think the 25th of March is closer to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Rather than the 28th of October.
Maybe the battle for Australia, the invasion of and bombing of Darwin would probably be the closest thing that would come to this.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Kokoda maybe as well.
Well, that's defending Australia in New Guinea, but the actual invasion and bombing of Darwin in World War II, I think, is something close.
But it's what I mean is, I guess it's a massive day for Greece where everyone celebrates. School kids march, every local town.
And there's a military march in Thessaloniki, and on the 25th of March we have the military march in the capital, in Athens.
All right, so we know it was 3 a.m., 28th of October. What led up to that event?
I think there are two key dates. The first one being April 1939, when the Italians occupy Albania. So the Greek government starts to realize how things will play out in the future. And the second event is the sinking of Eli, the destroyer, which was sank on the 15th of August while it was outside Tinos. It had been there for the festivities of the Theotokos. And the Greek government, from the fragments of the torpedo, realized that it was the Italians who had attacked, but deliberately it did not make this public. The perpetrator was unknown, and that was made public only after breakout of the war. I think 2 days after it became known that the Italians were behind this attack. So basically the Greek government knew that this was coming. Although this is a story of David versus Goliath, we should have in mind that there was an organized, methodical preparation for this confrontation. If we look at the armaments, the Greek government on armaments spending, there's a huge increase after 1936 when we start to realize that Europe is going towards war. I have a statistic which is very indicative. From 1923 to 1935, the Greek state spent 3 billion drachmas, and only in the 4-year period from 36 to 1940, it spent more than 15 billion.
Wow.
At the same time, you've got preparations in the north by preparing the fortifications and the trenches at the Metaxa line, we know today as Metaxala in the Rupel fortifications, so that we would be ready in terms of confronting an attack from the north.
So just geographically, can you describe where the Metaxala line is?
Eastern Macedonia.
Mm-hmm.
So in the south of the Greek-Bulgarian border.
Right.
Okay.
And under what auspices did these works begin? Because, I mean, if on one hand, they're sort of hiding the fact that the Italians were behind the sinking of a ship, how do you then rally people to go and start
At the
digging
time,
trenches?
there was always a concern since the Balkan Wars that Bulgaria would attack. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the fortifications were basically aiming at that to confront that front. At the same time, you've got the Greek government starts to devise mobilization plans. It is considered historically as an exceptional example of gradual mobilization. Since August, the government had ordered secret mobilization so that Epirus, your place, Nick, would be ready to defend itself. So on the 28th of October, we already had amassed 35 to 40,000 troops on the border. The Italians had 100,000. But it was critical that these guys defended well in the first few days till the rest would come. And within 15 days, we had, I think, 350,000 on the border.
Wow.
So this shows that there was an organized, well-prepared plan to defend the country.
Yeah.
Something that's not often mentioned, is it? I mean, just how well coordinated that was. I mean, you get the impression from the outset that it was a little bit ad hoc. Not the case.
No, it was not ad hoc. It was not spontaneous or impulsive. Within 15 days, 300,000 men and 125,000 animals were mobilized and pushed to the front. And another example of the enthusiasm of the Greek people was that although they had 5 days to enlist, most soldiers had enlisted by the first day.
Wow. I guess it would have been the war, Germany had invaded Poland and then the war had already started, so did the Greeks feel they were going to get involved somehow one way or another? Was it unavoidable in the end?
This is also where diplomacy plays a crucial role, and sometimes perhaps the wider public is not aware of what happens behind the scenes because these actions are not made public.
Yeah.
The Greek ambassador in Rome had predicted the attack in writing. He had said that the Italians would attack between the 25th and the 28th of October. There was a network of information from our embassy in Berlin as well. The Germans were not aware of the attack till one day before. So on the 27th, they knew that the Italians would attack. However, the embassy's role was crucial in telling Athens that this time the Germans will not interfere to stop the Italians from attacking, because they had done so in August. From this network of information, the Greek government had what you say in Australian, I like the term, an informed decision.
Right.
You can take an informed decision. You know all the parameters of an equation.
And how were they communicating at this point? Are these by telegraph? Are they?
Telegraph, yeah, the old way, yeah.
Right.
And so they knew very well what was coming, and I think that's why they were all very well prepared to address this challenge, this threat.
And plus, they would have seen the Italians mobilise in Albania as well. So he said April 1939. I thought, hang on, something's on here. Should we go a bit back to the actual day? So can you tell us what happened on the actual day?
There's some interesting background on the lead up. On the 26th, which is a Saturday of October, the Italian embassy holds a reception. They have invited the son of the great composer Giacomo Puccini. Giacomo has died, but his son is in Athens, Antonio Puccini, and they will, on the 27th, and I think there was a performance of Madama Butterfly.
Wow.
So the Italians are pretending that everything is business as usual. The Greek Prime Minister Metaxas is invited to this reception, but he opts not to go. And he sends 2 junior ministers to the reception so that they can, test the waters and see how the climate is. Because everyone knows that this is imminent, but then again, they're not sure about the exact timing. The next day, on the Sunday, so one day before, the Italian embassy holds another reception to celebrate the fascist rise to power. I don't know how many years it is the fascists came in the early 20s. I don't know the exact date now. So there is another reception. From the historical archives, we know that people felt a bit awkward because there was a lot of rumor that something is going to happen very soon. On the evening, the Italian ambassador goes to a friendly home of Greeks. He plays bridge. And while all this is unfolding, Rome has sent a cable, and junior diplomats at the embassy are deciphering it. The cable is the ultimatum with the text that the ambassador, Emanuele Grazzi, has instructions to read out to Metaxas. And this has been deciphered, I think, in the early hours of Sunday, 24 hours before he is instructed to visit the Prime Minister's house. So he leaves from this friendly home where he is, and not to raise suspicions, he plays, he's very happy, he's making jokes and playing cards, and then he decides to go to Kifisia. He doesn't take his own car, the official limousine. They drive with the military attaché's car, and he's escorted obviously by the military attaché and an interpreter. So there are three who go to Metaxas's house, which is in Kifisia. It is still there today. They arrive there. It's 10 to 3 apparently in the morning. Everyone's asleep, and they ring the bell. The guard informs someone in the villa that a foreign diplomat is here. They couldn't really discern the colors of the flag, and they thought it was a French diplomat. Metaxas opens the service door, not the central door of the house. He recognizes the Italian ambassador, so he probably knows what is coming. They come in, and the Italian ambassador leaves the other two in the car, and he goes in the villa on his own because he knows that he will speak to him in French. Both of them speak French, French being the language of diplomacy at that time. The Italian ambassador wrote his memoirs in 1945 in Italian, but the title of the book is The Beginning of the End. And there he describes these moments, and he makes a comment about the furniture, that it's a bit old-fashioned and a bit middle-class or petit bourgeois. Yeah, he makes a comment, a derogatory comment about the furniture. Anyway. Wow. And he goes in, he hands the text, the verbal note with ultimatum to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister reads it. Apparently, his hands start to shake. He becomes a bit emotional. And he tells the Italian ambassador in French, so we have war. Alors c'est la guerre. And this is the moment where the Italian ambassador, doing his job, tries to embellish the situation and tells them, well, we can avoid it if you allow us to occupy certain strategic posts in the country and allow us a free passage. So if you allow the Italian troops to go through Greek territory without any resistance. Metaxas responds, apparently he interrupts him. He says, no, I'll tell you what the case is. He says, theoretically speaking, if I were, which I'm not, to accept what you're telling me, could you name the strategic posts that we would have to hand out to the Italians until 6 o'clock in the morning? Because the ultimatum was for 6 o'clock in the morning. And the Italian ambassador responds, frankly, I have no idea. And so Metaxas says, you see, you have no idea because what you're asking is impossible. And he basically, tells him to leave. He escorts the Italian ambassador to the door. Apparently, he doesn't shake his hand. And the only thing that Metaxas tells him in French again, you are the stronger of the two, so that the Italian army is stronger. And there is a famous quote from the Italian ambassador's book where he says there that in my career, this was probably the most disgraceful moment where I felt so bad. And I admired an elderly man who chose resistance rather than enslavement.
I mean, I'm getting a little bit emotional just hearing that. Obviously, knowing the diplomatic process and being part of that. I mean, how does one react to to being proposed with such a, with such an ultimatum. Are you guys instructed on how to react in this, or is this off the books?
Fortunately, it has never happened to me, and I don't think it will. But yeah. But there are times where you have to convey a message which is unpleasant, and it's not personal. Our job is not personal and not emotional. You have to understand that when we speak, we represent the government.
Yes,
we're conveying a message.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was not that Grazzi that had a grudge against Metaxas. Grazzi is doing his job. He's being instructed by Rome to hand this ultimatum to the Greek Prime Minister.
Yeah. I just want to go back to when you said Puccini's son was doing a concert, I guess, 2 days before.
Yeah.
Was this a ploy from the Italian government to distract the Greeks? Because it sounds like the Italians would have made that decision a week.
The decision was taken on the 15th of October. Mm-hmm. There was a confidential, secret meeting in the Palazzo Venezia in Rome, where Mussolini met with had a meeting with his foreign minister, his son-in-law, Count Ciano, and the three main generals who were involved afterwards in the military campaign against Greece. And there he decides to attack, and initially they had planned to attack on the 26th of October. But then for logistical reasons, they changed their mind and they attacked 2 days later. But the decision had been taken on the 15th. So I'm not sure. I don't know historically whether that was a way to distract us or an example of diversion. But it is proven historically that Grazzi wanted to avoid raising any suspicions. And that's why he had orchestrated this of going a few hours before visiting Metaxas, he was playing cards.
So what happened immediately after? So he shut the door, Grazzi left, didn't shake his hand. Did he pick up the phone and contact anyone? What happened straight after?
I suspect he wouldn't have gotten any sleep after that.
Yeah.
Did he grab a Tsipro maybe? Or?
He calls the General Papagos, who's immediately promoted to a marshal in time of war. He promotes him at the spot, I think. He calls the king, a few ministers, and then he calls the first war cabinet, which is held at 4:30 in the morning at the building of the foreign ministry.
So very quickly.
Yeah. And then he starts communicating with key ambassadors, both foreign ambassadors in Athens, but also Greek ambassadors abroad. So he informs, I think from the foreign ambassadors in Athens, he informs Michael Paleret first, the British ambassador. He also speaks to, I think, the Greek ambassadors in Berlin, in London, and in Ankara, but I'm not sure. I might be wrong. In any case, I know that from what I've read that he contacts key Greek ambassadors in key cities.
So Grazzi said they'll come in at 6 a.m. They actually came in at 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So 4:30, he's phoned everyone. So the next hour, Italians started to come in.
And apparently mobilization was executed with one phone call.
Sorry, the Greek mobilization.
Yeah.
So one phone call to whom?
One phone call from Metaxas to Papagos, and then that's it.
That was it.
And then they start.
Okay, so from
Getting
4:30, 4 o'clock, we knew...
3:30, I think.
They knew.
Wow.
I think. Yeah.
So so if you look at the time, if Grazzi comes in at 10 to 3 a.m., something
3 a.m.,
like that,
yeah.
within 25, 30 minutes, the Greek army's ready to go.
Picks up the phone, he goes, boys, we're on, let's go.
Wow, unbelievable.
So what happened immediately after that?
At 9:20, the Italians bomb Patra, which is the first city to be bombed. And then there we have about 50, 60 casualties. And then in the next few days, they bomb Corinth, Larissa, Yanina, Preveza, and Souda Bay. At the same time, at the border, the 8th Division, Ogdoi Merarchia in Greek, which is responsible for the defense of Epiro, defends. And this is where famously General Katsimitros, he said Italians will not cross Kalpaki. Kalpaki is where the defense line of the Greek forces is. And this was crucial because if Kalpaki had fallen, the Italians would have reached Yanina. So Nick would probably be an Italian today.
Far out.
There you go.
Ciao.
That broadcast that we heard earlier, what time would that have taken place?
That's early in the morning. So the Greeks wake up and they know they're at war. And then enthusiastically they go to the various stations where they had to enlist.
It's hard to imagine that people would be all singing from the same song sheet when it comes to going to war. Was there any opposition at the time, or was there anyone who sort of thought, hang on, maybe we should negotiate or something like that, or was that never on the cards?
And this is interesting because
very unique situation.
some foreign ambassadors, and I think Grazi as well, had reported to Rome that this would be an easy expedition because the Greeks were divided, not united, yeah? And so they would, typically Greek, start arguing between themselves and not defend their homeland. They misled Mussolini by telling him that. Yeah. Famously, he said that within 10-15 days I'll be in Athens, and he wanted to surprise Hitler because he was annoyed that Hitler had sent troops to Romania to protect the oil fields from his perspective. Mussolini found out from the newspapers. So he said, I'm going to do the same to him. But we know that on the 27th of October, the Germans knew that the Italians were going to attack the next day.
What was the ultimate goal of going into Greece? I mean, was it strategic primarily, or was it an expansion thing? What was
it was part of fascist ideology that Italy had a mission to revive the Roman Empire in the Mare Nostrum. So Greece was considered as being part of its living space, if I were to use the term that the Nazis used at the time. So it was an area of Europe that belonged, quote unquote, to the Italians.
Right.
That's how they saw it. So that was the main reason, I think, to revive the Roman Empire and expand Italian territories. The Italians invaded to stay there, not to leave.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is interesting when you consider how Grazi was presenting it, in the sense that, we just need to occupy some key positions. Bullshit.
So I could have been Italian.
You could have been, mate. You could have been.
Far out. Yeah, I was just looking at the 8th Infantry Division, their flag, their insignia. They got Ochi on there. And it's a red bull, which is the image of a coin they used to print in 300 BC or whatever it was. So don't quote me on the date.
Could be one of
the key units then was the 8th Division, the 9th Division, and the 4th Brigade, responsible for Western Macedonia. And there's another hero. We know about Katsimitros, but we should also mention Davakis, who was a colonel, Konstantinos Davakis, who was brought back actually to the service because he had retired in 1936, if I remember well. And he came back to the army to defend the homeland. He excelled in the beginning of November when the Italians attacked with the Giulia division, if you've heard of it, the Giulia division.
Yep.
Their attack was again blocked there. So these two, I think, individuals and the divisions that defended Greece were critical in the first days, so that the rest of the mobilization plan could be executed.
So the plan was just to hold them off for a
Hold
couple
them
of days?
off, yeah. And he famously wrote to Athens that the Italians will not pass Kalpaki.
And who was the first high-ranking general to die? I think we mentioned him earlier.
The first high rank, he was a colonel, was a Romagnot Jew from Yanina, Mordechai Frizis.
I think we mentioned him in another episode together.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So he was one of
But he died, from what I recall, in November, so a bit later. But when he died, he was the highest ranking officer
at the time.
at the time, yeah.
Any documentation or any stories of the actual first invasion from 5:30 a.m.? Do we know what happened, or was it just the bombing campaign started and there were planes coming over the border?
Yes, and there's a lot of artillery going on and mortars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's where the Greek army had trained very well, apparently, in artillery, and we were quite precise, and that stopped the Italians. And the weather helped, actually, as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
The weather helped on those days.
Yeah. So what
It was getting cold, it was raining, yeah.
Okay, we're used to the cold and rain up there. That's fine. So what was Athens like at the time? So I think you mentioned earlier that people were running into the streets, it united everyone as a country, registering now to become soldiers in the army.
Yes, exactly. And in Epiro, there are many testimonies of civilians, women and elderly supporting the effort. So it's a mass mobilization of the country, of the whole nation, despite the divisions, the political divisions, and which had been, as I said earlier, considered to be a key factor, and they in the end they weren't.
Goes to show when you're a united country, doesn't matter how big you are.
Well, I mean,
what you can achieve.
It just sort of reminds me, going back to sort of ancient history, one of the quotes, believe it or not, I think it was actually Paul Cartledge who said this in one of the documentaries, is that whatever you may say about democracy, they field often the smallest but the most determined forces because they have every reason to fight. And this is a modern day example. You had Marathon where that was the case, but this is another example, a more modern day example of that, I think.
So when the Persian invasion came to Greece, Greece was also divided with these city-states. And so we have some 2,500 years later, the same thing repeating and the same response. A divided, fragmented country comes together under overwhelming odds to defend itself, and successfully does so.
Yeah,
it's very Greek, isn't it?
But look, I think we have to mention that the Greeks were heavily outnumbered against the Italians. Some people say it was 3-1. They had better.
In the initial days, yes, but afterwards, through this very efficient mobilization, we started to balance things, and then we counterattacked. Yeah. And by the end of November, we've reached Albania. We've crossed the border. The Greek army reaches Koritsa.
What really wiped out the Italians in the end? Was it the famous Primavera battle?
In March, we have the spring counterattack. That's where they try. Mussolini has replaced all the generals, and he's put someone else in charge because of the disaster of the first months.
Well, he turned up to...
And he tries to regain the momentum, but he fails again in March. And that's when, at the same time, discussions are ongoing between the British and mostly General Papagos, because Metaxas has passed away since January, on where the defense line should be against a very possible imminent German invasion. Yeah. Should it be at the Metaxa line, or should it be westwards towards the Aliakmona line? Yeah. And that's where we have different views between the two sides. There are very interesting discussions between the Greeks and the British at this point, and that's when the Australians come in as well.
Did Greece have any help from anyone at that initial invade? Did the Brits come? Did anyone else come and assist us at that time?
The British did come, maybe not to the numbers that we would have liked at the point, but we should not forget that the British were on their own as well. They were exposed in Britain, but also a key priority was to defend Egypt and counter Rommel's operations in northern Africa. So they're also stretched out at this point. But they do send troops to Crete immediately, and they also bomb key sites of the Italians.
The Air Force, the Royal Air Force, is on Crete at the time and in Egypt, and with them are also Australian pilots. What they did do is they bombed the Italian forces in Albania to assist the Greeks in that period from October into March 41.
Wow. Because from what I read, the last throughout the dice was when Mussolini went to Albania. I think it was 2nd of March, and they had this Operation Primavera, which was the Italian spring offensive.
Yeah, that's it.
And that was the last throw of the dice. So I think it went up
Rini epithesi in Greek. So the spring offensive. Yeah.
So how frustrated were the Italians by this resistance that they found?
I would imagine very frustrated. The fact that he kept on changing the generals who were in charge. It was a huge miscalculation on their part. Even if you read the archives, on the 15th of October, so 2 weeks before when the decision was taken, only one general had reservations. General Badoglio, for those who have read the history, he was a key figure in 1943 when Mussolini lost power, and then Italy was divided into two, where he had his stronghold in the north, but he had already lost half of the country. Badoglio was the one who signed the armistice with the Allies.
Right.
So he's the one who's got reservations. The rest are very keen on attacking and telling Mussolini that within 10-15 days he'll be in Athens.
And his reservations were based on what? I mean, the Greeks are not as divided as we think.
I think mostly on military grounds, that it was not such an easy venture as they had expected. It is a bit still sketchy about, what exactly were these reservations, but it seems that he was the most cautious, let's say.
So I think what broke the Italian invasion was the Primavera, Operation Primavera. So Peter, I think we talked it off air that 9th of March is when, or 2nd of March, Mussolini went to Albania himself. He basically said, I'm going to watch you guys break the Greeks back. And the war started, and they started bombing on the 9th, and it lasted to the 24th. But in particular, there was a battle called Hill 731, which was in Albania. So 731 is the meters above sea level. From what I understand, there was something like 16 raids up this mountain.
Up and down, yes, exactly.
Yeah, that had tanks.
It's a key moment as well.
It was. Yeah. And they're saying it was like the Thermopylae for Greeks, but the Greeks won.
And in Syntagma Square at the War Memorial where the Evzones are, there is a reference to Hill 731 for exactly that reason. It's one of the most heroic moments of the war.
I think we talked about it in our first World War II episode, but yeah, that was...
We did. You spoke for about 10 minutes about it by yourself. It was a monologue. It was fantastic. So, I mean, if you guys haven't heard that episode, the World War II episode, which Nick Andriotakis was on, definitely go back and listen to it at this point. It's a good time to rehash it.
Yeah, well, that was it. That was the end of the Italians.
So, Yanni, I understand as well that within a few days of the Ochi and the this first sign of resistance, Metaxas actually did come out and give a justification. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what happened?
This meeting I think it's very representative of his political thought. We should not forget that he was, during the Great Discord, Ethnikos Dichasmos, he was considered to be closer, he was a royalist, and he was considered to be closer to the Germans, yeah? And so on the 30th of October, he calls all the main publishers and editors of Athenian newspapers at a confidential meeting at the hotel Grand Bretagne in the center of Athens, so 2 days after the attack, where he outlines his rationale behind what he says, to ochi. Γιατί είπα όχι? Why did I say no? Yeah? And he explains that Greece in the short term will probably suffer and will probably be defeated in the long run, but that eventually it will come out of the war victorious and larger, he says. By larger, he meant Dodekanissa. So he had predicted that the Allies would win, and he says that the British in the end will win this war. The Germans cannot win. And this is incredible when it comes from him. And he explains to them and tells them that, very well, he tells them that I've always been very close to the late Constantine I. But right now, I am implementing Venizelos' policy. And he tells that to the publishers. And he says, if I had accepted the Italian ultimatum, we would have a three-way division of the country, trichotomisi. The official Greek government, which would have capitulated, would be in Athens. The majority of the Greek people would be disappointed and not loyal to this government. And then we would have a third Greek presence in Crete and the Aegean Islands, which would be directly controlled by the British. And he continues, he says, I know very well what it means for the country to be divided. He goes back to the 1915 15, 19, 16, 17 situation. And I don't want to provoke the same thing right now. So my decision was based on a very rational thinking.
I mean, the foresight to be able to see that, was this advice that he was being given, or was this just him thinking rationally into himself?
Yeah, it's probably rational thinking. He was 70 years old by then, almost. Yeah. And so he had seen a lot. I think that he had the insight, but also the vision to see how things will unfold in Europe. And he understood that the interests of Greece were closely intertwined with those of the British, because Britain being the major naval power in the Mediterranean. And he says that, I think, in that meeting.
Unbelievable. Wow. Yeah. Fantastic.
And sorry, I think you touched on it. When did he die? When did Metaxa pass away?
I think he died on the 28th of January 1941. Okay. And he was replaced by the governor of the central bank, Alexandros Korizis, who committed suicide in April 1941, when it was obvious that the Germans were at the doors, at the gates of Greece. Yeah.
So you never got to see what his promise was to the media.
No.
Sad. Yeah. Did Greece have anyone in leadership after the guy committed suicide?
The control is under the king, King George II, and a few days later, the king and key ministers leave the country and go to Cairo, and the person who signs the surrender of the Greek forces is General Tsolakoglu, who was the let's say the Quisling of Greece. In other words, the person who then collaborated with with the occupiers and governed the country with no legitimacy, obviously, from the Greek people.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Got it. So, Nick, Andriotakis.
Well, I'd like to give an Australian perspective.
Definitely.
Of what the press here in Australia at the time wrote about the events as they were unfolding. And on the 29th of October, the Sydney Morning Herald has a lead article, and it says, "Sydney Greeks celebrate. At last, deeds, not words." And at the Athenian Club, a whole bunch of Greek community leaders got together, and they basically shouted out, "Zito polemos," hooray for the war, in other words, and drank a toast to General Metaxas and Britain. Simultaneously, there were calls from all over the state, Warrialda and Wagga Wagga, hundreds of kilometres away, and basically it was summed up: news of the rejection of the Italian ultimatum was received with enthusiasm by the Greek community of Sydney. Here in Australia, there wasn't the large Greek population that you have today, but there was a significant community. There was at least 2 big churches, and they had a club. They had the Hellenic Club was already created at that time.
Catherians and Kazis?
There's a whole bunch of Ionian Islanders, including Catherians and Kazis, and Ithakusians, and early immigrants. And so that's what happened on the 29th. And then following that, we have another article on Tuesday the 29th, but it's in the Sydney Morning Herald. Mussolini says, "I solemnly declare that Italy does not intend to drag other peoples who are her neighbours into the conflict. Let Switzerland, Yugoslavia, Turkey, Egypt and Greece take note of these words." So that was from, as the Consul General said, from the Palazzo Venezia.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a succession of international crimes of violence by him dishonouring his word. He thinks he'll have to fight somewhere after all, so he strikes Greece. They call him a swagging bully, throwing his weight around at one of his neighbours.
This is Australian journalists.
These are Australian journalists, the Sydney Morning Herald editorials. Alone among the countries of southeastern Europe, to which the ruthless Axis pressure has been applied, Greece has stood up heroically for her independence.
Wow.
General Metaxas called upon the people to fight for all they hold dear. And this is going back to your early speech.
Yep.
And with the Italian forces already across the Albanian frontier, an appeal was made to Britain for certain assistance. Really, what was happening here is that the Italians wanted Greece, and they wanted the Balkans because it would give them an opportunity then to attack the British in Egypt. That's where the British were. They could take control of the Suez Canal and the strategic movements in and out of the Mediterranean, and that was part of it. Now, but what Churchill was doing, he could see the bigger picture, even though in the end Greece was a failed campaign when the Anzacs went there, as well as with the Commonwealth forces. But he got support from Roosevelt in the bill that was passed by Roosevelt, the Lend-Lease bill, which the Americans provided a loan of money, equipment and resources to England, and a lot of those resources ended up in Greece.
Okay.
Wow. So his idea was, how do I get America involved? And by Greece defending itself, this also inspired America. And there's some great there's some great quotations there from Roosevelt and other leaders of America, how Greece is standing up to Mussolini's Italy was a very heroic and very important and significant.
Was it the first loss to the Axis in World War II?
Absolutely. This was the first loss of the Axis forces being Italy, Germany, and it later also included Albania and Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And Greece was really fighting 4 countries during the Second World War. So this was the first loss. Britain had successfully defended itself in the Battle of Britain against the airborne invasion by Germany. So now there were only 2 countries. There was Greece and there was Great Britain. They were the only 2 countries that really stood up to the Nazi forces. Other countries had capitulated. Other countries had very unsuccessfully, I think it took only about 8 to 10 days to take over France.
Yeah.
Greece is fighting now. It's starting to fight from October the 28th, 1940, and it keeps fighting until the Germans and the Italians are gone in 1944. Yeah. And so there is resistance here from not only the forces, the actual armed forces, the defence forces of Greece, but there's resistance from a lot of civilians. The classic technique now that the fascists are using is, that Greece, he's persecuting minorities and all this sort of usual rhetoric. And this is classic excuses that authoritarian regimes use to invade countries. The Sydney Morning Herald on October the 30th says, like the hapless Norwegians and lowlanders before them, the Greeks, so far from striving to keep out of a war in which their country can only become a battleground, had allowed themselves to become the agents of a British policy. This is what the Italians say, and they had connived at breaches of neutrality. They had agreed to place air bases at Britain's disposal for operations against Athens. Therefore, defensive necessity obliged Mussolini, in violation of his earlier solemn pledge that he wouldn't invade these countries, that it was a temporary occupation of strategic points in Greece.
Right.
This is clumsy Italian fabrication, says the Sydney Morning Herald. The truth, of course, is that an independent Greece stands in the way of Axis plans to divide Britain and drive them out of the Mediterranean. You can see that there's this continual repeat of propaganda. Mussolini and Hitler have struck because it has become imperative for them to check the growth of British strength in the Eastern Mediterranean. The Battle of Greece is the natural sequel to the lost Battle of Britain and a necessary prelude to the unfought Battle of Egypt. This is what the Axis thinking of,
I have to say as a side note here, because we all know Nick Pappas, prominent solicitor and chairman of the South Sydney Rabbitohs and whatnot. Interviewing him some years ago, he produced an article from the Sydney Morning Herald from the time that his father arrived in Australia, where the Sydney Morning Herald is referring to Greeks effectively as subhuman and not allowing those people to come off the ships because of that. This is not that long after that.
That's right.
My, how the times turned.
It has. By the Greeks resisting, by the Greeks defending their country, they have won the admiration of countries around the world, and they've changed the global perception of the modern Greek. On the 12th of November, 1940, the Sydney Telegraph, big victory claimed in Northwest Mountains. A communique claims that Greek forces have destroyed an Italian division in the Pindus Mountains, which are the mountains in northwest Greece in Epirus. An American correspondent in Athens says this action is the Greeks' first big victory of the war. The London Daily Telegraph says the Italian defeat has inspired Greek morale. Another correspondent says an amazing story of the hardy women, children, and old men of the Pindus Mountains that played in the Greek victory. Greek women had taken and supported the army. As they were getting cut off, they went themselves and they toiled incessantly, the correspondent says. They carried machine guns and ammunition 6,000 feet up difficult tracks to the front line. These are civilian people supporting the Greek defence forces.
Yeah. We're talking about mobilisation.
This is the national mobilisation the Consul General referred to. There's no roads. There are tracks here. There's mud. There's sleet. There's snow. There's cold. This is pretty tough country.
And that's the women carrying all the ammunition and the weapons to the front line.
Everybody
strong women
in that region of Epirus, in your region, Nick, did what they could in their own way to support this defence of Greece. The Italian division no longer exists, and its men are dead or captured. The fighting, some died by the bayonet, some from exhaustion, some were drowned in a mountain river, and some were killed by wolves. So the injured Italians in Epirus, even the wolves descended upon them, the Greek wolves.
Wow. Probably the Molossan hounds that...
This is ugly hand-to-hand combat. This is an old-style warfare, man upon man, bayonet on bayonet, and gun on gun. This is pretty horrific stuff here.
I think we touched on it earlier, Hill 731. Italians would do raids up the hill, and it got hand-to-hand combat where they were hitting each other with rocks. Greeks would find boulders and rocks and throw at them, and they'd charge tanks because their old World War I rifles couldn't do anything, so they literally charged the tanks and bayoneted people in the tanks. Very ferocious people.
This is exactly what happened with civilians in Crete.
Yes.
A year later, 6 months later. So they know this is survival here. This is the human instinct here. The RAF, as I mentioned before, they were using Crete, and they're actually using a very interesting aerodrome in central Heraklion called the Kastelli Aerodrome. Now, the Kastelli Aerodrome was created just after the invasion on October the 28th. The British built it, and the Kastelli Aerodrome is what the RAF, including Australian pilots, flew from in their bombing raids against the Italians in Albania and on this front. For all our listeners,
so where is Kastelli? So it's
in the centre of Crete, south of the city of Heraklion, about 20 kilometres.
Wow.
This will be now, this is a very historic place, a modern historic place. This will be now, and it's under construction right now, the new international airport of Crete.
Oh, really?
This aerodrome, this track that was created in 1940, has been expanded over time as a military air force base, and now will be, after 2026, the new international airport of Crete. So, friends from around the world, when you fly into Crete on this airport, this is a historic place. This is a place where Australian, Canadian and English pilots would fly from to support the Greek defence.
There you go, Tom.
This is why we love this guy.
I love Nick. That's why I drink so much when Nick's around.
Well, we've just refilled as well, so again, Yiannis.
Unbelievable. Yes. Bravo, Nico. So,
Viva,
yes.
So I've got a few questions here. So remind me again how long it took the Germans to take over Crete.
It took about 11 days.
11 days, but it took them 8 days to take France.
Correct, yeah.
Wow, okay. And at the moment, most of the civilians in Crete didn't have rifles and ammunition. It didn't stop the Cretans coming out with pitchforks and anything they could find.
That's right. They came out with anything, with stones, shovels, sticks.
So
anything they could find.
So I understand the German paratroopers, this was one of the first times they did that exercise, coming in by parachute, and they never did it after that.
That's right. It was the
a
first
disaster.
and last major airborne invasion of a theatre of war.
Yeah. Of what happened. Yeah. And again, talking about women, it was the women out there as well with pitchforks and rocks. And
Exactly like the women of Epirus, the men, the older men that weren't enlisted, and the children, and anybody who could carry things. That's what they did, and that's what the papers write here. On Thursday, the 28th of November, more troops, but the Italians are still retreating. The Greeks continue to drive into Albania despite strong reinforcement of the Italian army. According to well-informed sources, Germany is leaving the fight against Greece entirely to Italy. Italian air activity is decreasing. Latest reports of the fighting on the Greek left flank say the Italians bombed 10 villages in Epirus and the islands of Corfu and Kefalonia. So this is not a very well-known fact, but that whole region was attacked in various ways.
Our airport in Corfu was attacked, and Corfu town was attacked.
By the Italians?
The Prime Minister of Australia, Robert Menzies, through the Consul General of the time, Emilios Vrissakis, sent a cable, and he said that he would, the government and the people of Australia are watching with admiration and enthusiasm the magnificent fight which the Greeks are once again waging against the barbarians. This is what Menzies calls the Italian fascist regime. General Metaxas expressed thanks for the federal government's gift of 10,000 tonnes of Australian wheat, or its equivalent in flour, to the people of Greece.
Wow, there you go.
So that's what's happening at that time.
Very interesting choice of words, though, as well. Barbarians.
Oh, well, I'll give you some more information a little bit later of more barbaric activity that's not very
sure
well
you
known.
will.
So at the Sydney Town Hall, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Premier of New South Wales, and Emilio Vrissakis, the Consul General, gather together, and the government approves £30,000 for blankets, warm clothing to be sent to Greece. Deputy Prime Minister, representing Robert Menzies. Today we have the encouraging spectacle of the legions of Mussolini being driven back. And I'm sure that I speak for the majority of Australians when I say that I hope before long that these Italians will be expelled from the country to which they have no right of possession whatsoever. This is the feeling in Australia, the official feeling of what the government thinks.
So was there animosity in Australia with the Italians, immigration?
There was. They were rounded up.
Wow.
And they were put into various camps around Australia.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know we did that with the Japanese. I went down to, I think it was Cowra.
The Italians were also on that list, and they were rounded up as well, and that's for another podcast again.
Wow. Okay, big story.
The plot thickens.
Absolutely. And so what they do is they announce a Greek Day around the country, that a collection day be called Greek Day, organised throughout Australia to provide comforts for the Greek soldiers, as a demonstration of Australia's recognition of the valiant service rendered by Greece in the defence of liberty.
What date was that, Nick?
That was 29th of January at the Town Hall, the Sydney Town Hall, as reported by the Greek National Tribune.
What year?
1941.
Oh, still?
We're still there.
Still 1941.
We're still there, yeah. This is all about now. The Italians have invaded Greece.
Yeah, so literally that whole week.
Yeah, the months after that.
Papers went right.
They're sending. Greece is still free.
Yeah.
The Germans haven't arrived in April, so Greece is still free.
Yeah.
And the Australian government and other governments around the world are sending clothing, money, grain, food, and all kinds of supplies there. Okay. And that's what this is about.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Didn't realise Australians were sending supplies to Greece.
It's big. And the newspapers are full of all kinds, not only during this period but through the Second World War.
Yeah.
Emilio Vrissakis, the Consul General of Greece, him and his wife, they drove on the most craggiest, dustiest, dangerous roads of New South Wales, and they connected with communities all over the place, and they attended just about every Grecian ball, organised to raise money for Greece and for the Greek people. And this is and for the Red Cross, and to send goods and supplies during the Second World War.
So this is,
Yeah.
again, this is Yiannis' one of Yiannis' predecessors.
Absolutely, yeah.
Big shoes to fill, Yanni.
Yeah, and Emilios Vrissakis was the Consul General from 1939 to about 49, 48, something like that.
At least 10
Yeah,
years.
and he two of his sons were young boys at the time, and Costa and his brother, I think Costa is definitely alive today. I don't know about his brother, but we both know Costa is a lovely man. And Costa Vrissakis is a big supporter of a lot of Greek community events.
Fantastic.
And the legacy left by his father and his mother is outstanding.
Wow.
Outstanding.
And at that juncture, there's no embassy, yes, because Canberra is still under construction. So until 1953, Greek interests, from a diplomatic point of view, are served through Sydney.
Right.
So the only diplomatic mission we have here is the Consulate General. So he's more than a Consul General in the way I am for you guys.
But we know you would take that trip out to all.
He's
New
much
South
more.
Wales.
He's de facto an ambassador.
Yeah.
You would have done the same, Yanni, plus more.
We
Absolutely.
will never find out.
Nice. Nice one.
So, our debt to the Greeks. So, at the town hall meeting there, the Sydney town hall meeting, we will never be able to repay the debt we owe them. For the fight they are putting up for us, their fight must leave an indelible impression on our minds. Their indomitable courage has been an inspiration to all. This is what Australians are saying about Ohi and the Greek defence.
Did you know this stuff, Nick?
No, not at all. I'm blown away.
Yeah.
I'm blown away that what you said earlier as well, that was the Brits and the Greeks were the only one in the fight.
Yeah.
World War II.
That to me makes sense, though. This, when you consider, as I said earlier, just maybe a couple of decades before that, the Sydney Morning Herald was writing, let's face it, pretty racist things at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on the flip side of that, during the migration period, our parents and grandparents also were, the butt of quite a lot of racism. It's very interesting to see how uniting this conflict was and the sentiment towards Greece at that period. It's very interesting.
It is, because in 1915, when the schism happened and the two governments of Greece were formed, the one in Athens and the one in Thessaloniki, Venizelos was in Thessaloniki and King Constantine was in with Metaxa in Athens. There were massive riots in Australia because the Greeks did not side with the Allies in World War I, and there was a massive schism, and there were riots, there were shops destroyed, the Kalgoorlie riots are part of that. But eventually, when the Bulgarians invaded Greece, then the king fell on his sword, and Venizelos assumed control, and Greece joined the Allies, I think in late 16 or 17. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
With the Salonika
17.
front.
That's right. And then after that, you've got the Australian nurses in the Salonika front, the English, Scottish.
I guess just for context, for everyone listening, that Nick's got articles from all these newspapers from 1941,
that's
1942.
right. Yeah.
So he's reading them all out.
Absolutely.
So we can see what he's
I'd
doing.
I'd rather read what they said at the time.
Definitely.
That was fresh as.
So what we're hearing is, first-hand.
I mean, in many respects, it's a primary source.
Primary
it's the
source.
first draft to history.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the Jewish community around the world, they rallied as well, and there were appeals to the Jews of New York, Chicago, Buenos Aires, Palestine and Egypt to contribute to the Greek war relief. And then we, let's expand a little bit here on the RAF. This is something that's not very well known. Australians were seconded from the RAAF into the RAF, and many of them served. Coming back to mentioning Castelli Airport, we were talking about the
2026.
2026. So Thomas Edward White Howes flew missions over Greece from Castelli Air Base, which was established in November 1940. This will be the new airport, as I said. Eventually, Thomas Edward White Howes was given the Distinguished Flying Cross, and he became a pilot of Qantas Airways, Nico.
Hey,
Really?
There you go.
He was a first officer navigator on Qantas, Boeing 707 V-Jets for many years, and he lived at Pymble.
Wow.
John Travolta is one of them.
Yeah,
He does?
That's right, exactly. So it's probably the plane that he was on.
Could be.
So from bombing the Italians, the fascist Italians in Albania,
The city of Canberra, that plane.
he probably flew my father in 1967 when he went back to Greece on the 707 V-Jet. And I think that's a bit of a small connection
Bit
there.
of side trivia.
Yeah, that's right. So the AWM has a large collection of items from him, and that includes his flights, a lot of documentation, including Qantas navigational flight logs, medal ribbons, receipts, and letters. There's a lot of information at the Australian War Memorial on this gentleman. On a sadder note, a cable was received in the Musselbrook Chronicle. Musselbrook is a town 300 kilometres northwest of Sydney in the Upper Hunter Valley. It was received in the town of Scone, just near Musselbrook. Flight Lieutenant Alan Bryan is missing and believed killed in action over Greece. 2 other members of the crew of his plane are prisoners. Flight Lieutenant Bryan, who was a personal friend of Mr. and Mrs. Keefe, was about 7 years ago on the staff of the commercial bank at Murrurundi. So these are the towns of the Upper Hunter where he worked. He was the son of Mr. Sidney Bryan and Mrs. Sides of Darling Point. He was married. So then we have William Joseph Hickey, Distinguished Flying Cross, squadron leader, lived at Richmond on the outskirts of Sydney and at Centennial Park.
Okay.
Wow.
So many people know Centennial Park.
Yep.
On the 21st of December 1940, a formation of 10 gladiators in 3 flights led by Commander Hickey left Yanina to carry an offensive patrol against the Italians over the region of Argyro-Castro. Hickey's plane was hit and he bailed out. His parachute caught on fire and he died from his injuries soon after reaching the ground.
Oh, wow.
So Argyro-Castro is in Albania, but the people that recovered him were Greek troops. They recovered his body. For the action, he was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and is commemorated on the Al Alamein Memorial in Egypt, because a lot of them flew out of Africa as well. So his body was recovered, but there's been no burial grave. His wife, upon receiving the Distinguished Flying Cross for her late husband, this is what she said: "Faith is not enough. Every eligible man should enlist, and their women folk should see that they do. Otherwise, the men who have died in action have died for nothing." And this is when Mrs. Hickey was given a posthumous award for her late husband, the Distinguished Flying Cross.
Yep.
And she says, "I've got 2 boys, Michael and Peter. They're 4 and 2. I haven't told them yet about their father. I can't bear to. The DFC will go to the eldest boy."
So there's a bit of an Australian connection there, even right at the beginning of the war.
Absolutely.
War through
Yeah,
Albania
absolutely,
and-
yeah. And not many people have broadcast this or talked about it, because to find this information takes a bit of work.
Yeah,
A
definitely.
bit of work, yeah.
Mate, Nick, you are number 1 at research.
It takes a Nick Andriotakis.
Well, the thing is that we're connected. We live in Australia, and we have Greek heritage, and there's a lot of historical connections here. There are probably a lot more things to discover about people like Flight Commander Hickey
Yeah.
and his family.
Amazing stories, and it's great to hear what the Australian media would say what was happening in Greece. But look, there was a bigger movement, I guess. I think Tom touched on it earlier about why the reason why we're all here.
Yes.
You know, that one word, ohi, transitioned to mass migration, to the US, into Australia, where we're from. The reason why our parents here, why we're all here, I guess.
The post-war migration, Nick, starts here. The global post-war migration of Greeks into North America, South America, Australia,
Africa,
South Africa,
Yeah.
Western Europe. It starts here because we're crazy enough to say no. We're crazy enough to defend our country. We can see what's right and we can see what's wrong. And the destruction of Greece starts now. Hundreds of thousands of people die. War, execution, genocide, starvation. The largest urban Jewish population of Europe in Thessaloniki goes. About 800,000 Greeks have perished. My mother becomes an orphan She has a mother, but she's lost her father, my grandfather.
Just on that point, I was having this discussion with my wife before I came here. Both her great-grandfathers died in this conflict. Her grandmother, so never actually met her father. She was born after he had gone to war and died in Albania.
And we have the same story in our family and my wife's family. Her cousins are Nick Bertakis in Crete. Talks about his father, how one of the Cretan, his brother George Bertakis, he's come back from Albania. He's in Crete. He's still wearing the uniform. Hitler's obviously made certain orders that a lot of Greek army personnel are to be left alone to go back to their families. But for whatever happens, there's a skirmish there, and he gets killed about 10 kilometers from the village. Nick's father, Kyriako Bertaki, he goes looking for him, looking for his brother 10 kilometers away, and he takes my wife's uncle, Lefteri. They go there and they search for him, and they start digging the mass burial ground with their hands.
Wow.
And they find his tag, and they recognize him. Then they put a mark. They've gone there during dusk and night, and they put a mark, and they go back the next day. Kyriako's mother wants her son back, dead or alive. And Kyriako takes Lefteri, they find him, they take him out of the ground the following day, and they take him back to the village, to Marathokefala, where he's buried.
Unbelievable.
So there are stories like this all over Greece.
Can you refer where the genocide was in Greece?
The largest Jewish city in Europe, Thessaloniki. There were about 80,000 Jewish Greeks in Thessaloniki, and they've been living there at least since the Inquisition in Spain.
Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah.
We actually did a whole episode on it, didn't we?
And probably blended,
Yep.
as the Consul General said, with Romagnoti Jews
Yeah.
who've been there since biblical times.
So they got rounded up and taken
Absolutely.
to concentration camps.
Yeah.
That's where the genocide comes from.
That's the genocide of the Jews.
Okay.
But
You did
apart from
mention-
that,
Yes,
there was the
go on.
destruction of Greece. Hundreds of thousands of Greeks due to starvation,
Yeah.
war,
Yeah.
and how many Greeks were orphaned?
Yeah.
My grandfather, he died during the war. And as Tom had
Was he in
alluded to
battle?
his family. No, he wasn't in battle, but he still died.
Yeah.
He died from, I'll tell you how he died. Because of the poverty
Yeah.
and the lack of goods and services, resources, everything,
Yeah.
he basically put on a pair of boots from a dead soldier, and he got tetanus from a nail in the boots.
Yeah.
And that's how he died.
Unfortunately, they're common stories.
Yeah, so there are a lot of deaths, not just
Yeah.
military deaths,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of other deaths.
Yeah.
There's
The
firing-
famine being the
Yeah.
most
one.
deadly.
The famine.
The
The famine.
winter of 1941, 1942
Yeah.
is where we lost the most civilians.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, that's the period that we've spoken about previously with my papu. You know, I've told the story previously where he remembers that period, and he would cry uncontrollably, and his mother would say, "Παιδί μου, τι έχεις?" And he's like, "Pinao."
Wow. So
Yeah.
41,
Yeah.
42.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. And they took the food off the Greeks.
Yeah.
Whatever food was there, they took it. And they took it to feed their soldiers, and they took it to feed soldiers in other conflicts in other parts of Europe. That's what they did, and people starved. If you were in Athens, in big urban centres and that, you had no access to farmland. You starved. You were disconnected from an agricultural region. You starved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Was it true that the ones that did survived on horta? They'd find horta in the fields. People thought it was just a weed, but...
Yeah, so the Greeks had this amazing diet they've had from antiquity, which the Germans and the Italians couldn't recognise, at least the northern Italians couldn't.
Yeah.
And that was horta, wild greens.
Yeah.
The olive oil was scarce, but there'd be enough just to sprinkle a couple of drops on it. There was no bread. These are stories my parents have told me. There was a lack of bread. There were horta.
Yeah.
The Germans didn't know what horta were, so they left them alone.
Because it essentially looks like a weed, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
I've got plenty in my front yard I can't get rid of.
Yeah. And that's for another podcast too, Nick.
Yes, I know, Nick, you're a master on horta as well. We'll get to that one day.
But apart from... So there's definitely firing squads, all over Greece.
Yeah.
And am I right in saying, I think we've mentioned this previously, pound for pound, Greece probably copped the worst of it in terms of, I think the quote was 10% of the population.
Yeah, so Poland and Greece are the biggest, and Russia probably.
Russia.
I reckon they're in the same orders of percentages.
So very heavy price.
Yeah, look, because in Greece you had civilians fighting as well. So there were repercussions for that. Firing squads. The other thing that happened, so as we said, there were orphans, right? There was the destruction of infrastructure, hospitals, harbours, roads, bridges, tunnels, houses. The social and political structures collapsed. So after the Second World War, there was a civil war. There was political vacuum. So during this period, 1925, let's say, to 1940, there's a whole generation. That's my parents' generation.
Same here.
And they had very little schooling, very little education. Both my parents went to 4th class primary. I was the first person to ever go to university in the history of entire families on both sides, ever.
Really?
Ever.
The first Andriotakis.
The first, yeah.
Wow.
So that's the opportunity that Australia gave us. And we're very grateful for that.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? In this war, this generation, they had dreams too. They were invigorated young people. Even though they'd seen and gone through war, they still had dreams. But the lack of resources, the civil war, the post-war society couldn't accommodate them. And they took off. They took off. The post-war migration, the post-war Hellenic, the post-war Greek migration came after the destruction of Greece.
It's crazy because they won the war. You win, but there's nothing left.
Yeah, it's the Pyrrhic victory. That's what you're saying. Look, for some people it was a Pyrrhic victory after Pyrrhus of Epirus. This generation, with little education, but with dreams and risk, the taking of risk. They go around the world with no language, with no real empowerment of grammata, of education. And they come to these societies and they are resilient because what they've seen, nobody has seen. They are hardworking and they not only survive in this country and around the world, this diaspora, this Greek diaspora thrives. And this podcast here and this table we're sitting on now, it's all of those decisions and all the decisions of our parents that bring us to this table and to this discussion today. We should remember that everything that's gone before us is part of us. And it's a living history that we should talk about on a regular basis. As the Consul General said, every day he talks to his kids about it. And I encourage everybody around the world to learn a little bit more and to discuss the past as if it is today, because there are many lessons. There are many legacies there that could empower you today, wherever you are around the world. Because this was an unbelievable victory. This was an unbelievable, and even crazy, you might say, defiance. But that's who they are. That's who the Greeks are. Even though there's no education, even though there's none of this, there is a oral history. There's a continuous oral history and legacy from ancient times. That's what Orchidea shows, and that's what it informs us.
I can't remember which of you two gentlemen it was that actually said it, but I just love the expression so much. That Orchidea and this discussion effectively is the birth certificate of the Greek diaspora. For the Consul General in particular, I mean, the fact that this diaspora does exist, what does it evoke for you to know that we are all here as a result of these decisions that were made, during this, I mean, tragic in many ways, but also in the same breath victorious? How does that make you feel?
I once described the relationship between Australia and Greece as being a couple which got engaged in Limnos, got married in Crete, and then had many children. And this is the story of Greek Australians.
Wow.
The first contact is in Limnos, But then Greece, mainland Greece, the campaign, and Crete are the foundations of what we have today and why you guys are here. Maybe not me, but the fact that you've achieved so much. And I think Nick makes a very valid point about perseverance and resilience of that generation. We have described trauma, basically. We've mentioned war, famine, civil war. These people left, I think statistically, was the poorest country in Europe when they left Greece in the aftermath of the Second World War. They came here with nothing, with their suitcase. And
sometimes not even with that.
Yeah, and they built something from scratch without even speaking the language. Many of them were illiterate, but they had this thirst and self-awareness that they belong to something greater, that their past defines their present. And it's incredible how these people had a drive to get for the children to get educated, to become wealthy. So now it's up to the newer generation to keep this light alive, and the baton. The baton has gone now to the new generations. Greek Australians, at least I can speak of them, especially of those in Sydney, have achieved so much, and it's up to them to continue to achieving even more.
Amazing.
Far out. How's that for a summary?
Great summary.
In Australia, we've had and other countries that the Greeks have been very successful in.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to acknowledge that. And so to see these ties, that the place you live in around the world, my fellow brothers and sisters in diaspora, look at your country. What are the ties it has to Greece? Are they contemporary ties? Are they ties of World War I, World War II? What are those ties? Or is it just purely immigration? Or is it music or something?
Yeah.
Find out what they are and connect Greece with your place of residency today. Give back to your heritage, give back to the place that's welcomed you and your family, and support those connections and the legacies and ties that have existed, exist, and inform the future to exist again. These are very important ties, and so we should work on them, and we should give a little bit back to our heritage and to the place we love wherever we live around the world.
Is that like a mic drop moment?
I think so.
Boom.
I think the message really is, like Nick's saying, get involved.
Yeah.
Learn about our history, our heritage, and let's keep telling these stories. I think Nick Giannopoulos was talking about this in episode 1 of this season. Mm-hmm. It's important that we continue to tell these stories and own that story. So, number one, it's not forgotten.
Yeah.
But so, we're passing it on to our children, and there's an understanding of why we're here and what it means to be Greek Australian. It's such an important message, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think we're getting better at that now. We probably weren't good at that in the 70s and 80s, but now...
Now you've got people starting podcasts about it.
Yeah, exactly. Telling the world.
And it is also important, I think, to acknowledge the great contribution of Australians of non-Greek origin
absolutely
to the defense of freedom in Greece. Because sometimes I realize that many of them left and traveled 15,000 kilometers to fight in a foreign country for us.
Yeah. That's a great point, yeah.
And this is incredible, and we should acknowledge that, because
absolutely
Australia is our new home. I mean, not mine, but yours definitely, yeah? And we're very grateful to what Australia has offered to the Greek people and the opportunities that it gave.
Tom, how lucky are we, eh? We've got best of both worlds. Born in Australia, like what a country, and we've got heritage like Greeks. What our ancestors have done. We've got the best of both worlds, I think.
We definitely do. We definitely do. It has to be said. And most importantly, though, this country has made us and our families really value what it means, I think, primarily to be Greek, but also Australian. But it's also given us the opportunity to have amazing people and amazing friends like the ones in this room. The fact that we can have this kind of a discussion and really appreciate these stories and, sort of look at them and be something that, be a source that other people can learn from as well. We get a lot of mail about that, about, I learned a lot of things from, our history-based episodes and whatnot. This is another example. I mean, I'm personally just so proud to always have Nick Andriotakis here with us and the Consul General. I mean, where do we go from here? There's going to be another one.
Oh, we'd have to.
Sure.
We'd have to. I feel like there's a lot we haven't covered, but
we say it at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a call out to the communities around the world, as I have already, but look at Ohi Day in your community, wherever you are around the world. This is the premier day. This is the day that is closer to us, the global post-World War II Greek communities around the world. This is the day that should be commemorated as the principal day. March the 25th, 1821 is very important. But closer to us here is the 28th of October, 1940. And all of us, all the communities around the world should use this as the premier day with our communities to commemorate the amazing defense of Greece.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well said.
I would like to finish as well with my key message.
Please.
I think the main conclusion from, I would say, a mainland Greek's perspective is that Ohi is the result of the determination of a people to defend its freedom and its homeland, coupled with execution of a well-prepared military plan. So emotion together with reason is the best, brings the best results. And I think this is a typical example of this. We need both as Greeks, reason and emotion.
Well done.
Well said.
And an announcement on our side from the point of view of the Consulate General. A less known angle of this story is the fate of the antiquities of Greece and how a group of young archaeologists had the foresight to protect these antiquities before the Germans arrived in Athens. And we will have a lecture by the deputy head of the Australian Archaeological Institute at Athens, Dr. Paspalas, on the 27th of November at Parliament House here in Sydney. I urge all Greeks of Sydney to book their tickets on time.
That's going to be a fantastic presentation. We're going to be there. Another one of those lesser-known stories that that we can. I mean, there are potentially podcasts in there. There's books. There's documentaries in all that. And can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah,
thank you for
definitely.
announcing that.
Thank you for that.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here again. Nick Andriotakis, Consul General Yiannis Mallikourtis. We are so proud to have had you here again. I'm sure it's not the last time.
Definitely not.
Thank you.
WZOTalk@outlook.com is the email. Follow us on social media at WZOTalk and at WZO_talk on most social media platforms. Also on YouTube. Make sure you jump on YouTube as well to check out our videos on Ohi Day, of which there will be a couple. Nick Athanasiou, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Στο Soundees, στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcasts και στο Google Podcasts.